There is a part of you that you don't talk about, not even in silence. A part that you have repressed so deeply that you no longer know if it is yours or if it is a mistake. It has no name in everyday conversations. It doesn't appear on social media, and it would never be mentioned in a prayer. You joke about it, you rationalize it, you ignore it. But it doesn't go away, because at night, when the world falls asleep and the masks slip away, it whispers. Sometimes, not even that. It just vibrates like a formless discomfort, a restlessness without cause. And what it carries is not romanticism, not even eroticism. It's something more raw, more primitive. It is desire, yes, but not the kind you've learned to desire. It is desire for control, for surrender, for domination, for surrender. It is shame and lust in the same gesture. It is fear and fascination in the same gaze. Carl Jung did not shy away from this. On the contrary, he looked straight into this dark place and said something that even today many people are not prepared to hear. This part needs to be integrated, not fought, not sanctified, integrated, because what is not brought to consciousness returns as destiny. And when it comes to repressed sexual energy, that destiny is often brutal. It returns in the form of addiction, of sabotage, of a life where you act against what you say you want, where you repeat patterns you swore you would abandon, where you move away from what is good for you and chase after what destroys you. And all this without knowing why. The sexual shadow is not just repressed lust. It is everything you were not allowed to feel. It is the attraction you hid, the fantasy you judged, the surrender you never experienced. It hides in the places where you smile while inside you cringe. It shows itself in relationships where you walk away for no reason, in empty encounters that leave you more alone than before, in that feeling that something essential is missing, but you don't know what. The sexual shadow lives where there was silence, where you had to kill something in yourself to be accepted. And what was killed now returns as absence, as apathy, as that constant feeling that everything is fine, but nothing is alive. Jung saw this as a psychic amputation, and there is no way to move forward whole while parts of you remain exiled. That is why he said that the process of individuation, the path to becoming who you truly are, requires going through this darkness, touching what was considered dirty, wrong, dangerous, not to surrender to it, but to rescue what was trapped there, your strength, your presence, your truth. And maybe, if you have the courage to look at it, you will discover that what scares you the most is actually what liberates you the most. You can maintain the image of the pure woman, the controlled man, the emotionally balanced and spiritually elevated person. You can speak beautifully, act correctly, be the reflection of everything that is expected of you. But behind that appearance, the shadow pulsates, and the more you try to stifle it, the more it finds cracks, in the fantasies that arise without warning, in the dreams that disturb you, in the guilt that appears the moment you allow yourself to feel pleasure. Sometimes it manifests itself in the fear of being seen for who you really are, in the sudden shame of surrendering, or in the silence that appears when the connection becomes too intense. The sexual shadow does not invade. It insinuates itself. It silences your body, confuses your affections, transforms intimacy into distance and desire into anxiety. And you rationalize. You call it tiredness, a phase, stress. But deep down it is mourning. Mourning for the parts of yourself that were never allowed to exist. It's not just about sex. It's about everything that desire carries: vulnerability, impulse, exposure, need. Jung didn't say that the shadow should be obeyed, Nor did he say that it should be fought. He stated with uncomfortable clarity that it needed to be known, because only what is recognized can be transformed, and everything that is kept in the dark does not die. It gains strength. Integration begins when you decide to listen to what you have been avoiding. When instead of running away or judging yourself, you ask, what is this part of me trying to show me? What does it want to reveal to me? Because beneath the sexual shadow, there is always a cry for fulfillment. Not just physical, but emotional, energetic, psychic. An ancient desire to be whole without having to pretend. And maybe that's why it hurts so much to face this process, because it requires you to abandon your idealized perfection and accept your naked truth. Jung said that enlightenment is not achieved by imagining figures of light, but by becoming aware of the darkness. The question is no longer what is wrong with you, but what you have buried to appear right. And how many times a day does that cost you presence, pleasure, connection? The crack starts small, an annoyance, a repetition, an emptiness that persists. But that's where the light comes in. And maybe, if you have the courage to listen, that shadow will finally begin to come home. Most people don't notice when the disconnection begins. It sets in gradually, like background noise that becomes part of the silence. And when it comes to sexuality, this process is often early and brutal, because desire is one of the first experiences of power that a child feels in their body. Not a rational power, but something instinctive, mysterious, alive. And when that energy is met with repression, shame, or silence, it doesn't disappear, it fragments. The child learns that there is something inside them that needs to be hidden, something that, if revealed, will be punished or rejected. Thus, the sexual shadow is born, not as evil but as survival, a psychic protection mechanism. That which was deemed too dangerous to exist in the light of day is pushed into the unconscious. But Jung warned, everything you bury comes back, and it never comes back the same. Denied desire transforms. It returns as compulsion, as judgment, as fascination with people who embody exactly what you have denied in yourself. You desire them and hate them. You admire them and reject them. You try to mold them, control them, save them. But what you're really trying to do is rescue yourself. The unconscious does not speak with words. It speaks with tension, with obsession, with sudden discomfort in the presence of someone who lives freely what you have learned to fear. Jung said that everything that irritates us in others can lead us to understanding ourselves. And this applies especially to sexual reactions. If someone awakens something too intense in you, whether it's desire, jealousy, envy, or revulsion, it's a sign that this person has embodied an aspect of yourself that you have not yet integrated. Maybe it's the freedom you haven't allowed yourself, the surrender you've always repressed, the guilt-free pleasure that seems unattainable, but it's all there, inside you, living in the shadows. And as long as that part remains buried, you will not be free. Repression does not generate virtue, it generates division. You begin to exist in pieces. On the outside, you seem functional, mature, even admirable. But inside, something suffocates, because the body does not forget what the mind has tried to erase. It warns you, it hurts, it sets off subtle alarms. Repressed desire does not die, it hides. And the more time passes, the more it distorts itself. This is how double lives are born. The balanced facade and the secret night. The controlled routine and the uncontrollable impulses. It's not hypocrisy, it's disintegration. Jung called this the narrow passage, a painful, inevitable passage for those who decide to dive into their own abyss in search of wholeness. The only way out, in this case, is inward. On the other side of this narrow passage, there is something that few know: vitality. Because the sexual shadow is not only made up of wounds, it is also the home of your creative strength, your emotional intensity, your ability to feel pleasure without guilt. And this truth, although uncomfortable, is liberating. Most people who say they are tired are not exhausted from overwork or commitments. They are drained by a silent, constant effort to keep themselves under control, of appearing adequate, of wanting what is right, of fitting in with what is expected. This consumes vital energy, because living by policing every impulse requires more than any physical effort. Jung saw this in his patients. He said that many neuroses are not born of extreme trauma, but of a refusal to accept the necessary suffering that the soul requires to become whole. The price of repression is high and almost always charged with interest. People distance themselves from themselves, and distancing becomes the norm. They suffer, but they rationalize. They confuse rigidity with maturity, denial with balance. But the wound remains alive, no matter how many layers of normality are placed on top of it. The way out has never been the abandonment of sexuality, nor its glorification. The way out is awareness. Not a cold, analytical awareness, but a sensitive, honest presence that is willing to listen to what was previously avoided. That asks, where does this impulse come from? Why does it scare me? What is it trying to awaken in me? Because behind every repressed desire there is a symbol, a call from the soul, and it is not about obeying desire, but deciphering it. When you begin to name what you felt only as guilt or discomfort, it changes form. The impulse becomes a sign, desire becomes language. The shadow which once sabotaged you begins to cooperate. Your energy returns, not as chaos, but as presence. You stop acting out of fear or compensation, and you finally begin to live authentically. Jung said that wholeness is not perfection. It is the union of opposites. And perhaps no opposites are more difficult to unite than what you feel and what you have been taught to deny. Because the sexual shadow touches the most intimate core of your humanity. It stirs up what has been buried by morality, religion, family, culture, and by you. But there is something even more dangerous than feeling desire. It is never feeling anything again. The rejected shadow turns into numbness, into a soulless routine, into lukewarm relationships and touches without presence. You think you are living with stability, but you are only surviving in fear. The shadow will knock on your door again, and if you don't open it, it will come as a rupture, as destiny. Not because you were weak, but because you tried to be only half of yourself. You can build a life that seems perfect. You can have someone by your side, a stable home, a functional routine. You can touch, smile, talk. But if your sexual shadow remains buried, there will come a time when it will all seem fake. You wake up next to someone and feel nothing. Touch becomes habit. Presence becomes absence. You remain in lukewarm, numb relationships and destroy those that make you feel too much. You begin to confuse intensity with threat, security with boredom, stability with anesthesia. And all of this happens subtly, silently, until one day you no longer recognize who you have become. But Jung would recognize it, because he knew what happens when someone denies their own shadow. There is no peace, there is division. And a divided self is only capable of building equally fragmented bonds. You may be sexually active but emotionally absent, physically present but psychologically distant. You may even smile during intimacy, but you feel something inside you wither with every touch. And the worst part is that the other person feels it. They may not be able to explain it, but they sense that something is missing, as if you were always a little distant, even with your eyes open. They will try to understand. they will think it is their fault, that there is something wrong with them. They will start blaming themselves, cutting themselves down, questioning their own worth. But the truth is that they are only facing someone who has not yet had the courage to face themselves. When ignored, the sexual shadow does not destroy relationships with scandals. It destroys them with silence, with disconnection, with an emptiness that grows slowly until it becomes unbearable. And that emptiness spreads. It starts in relationships, but soon contaminates everything. Your creativity disappears. Your sense of purpose falls apart. Even your spirituality dries up, becoming a soulless ritual. Jung said that repressing sexual energy not only limits desire, it hurts the soul. Because this energy is more than just the body. It is a symbol. It is the instinct for life. It is creative movement. When this force is blocked, life slows down. You postpone decisions, lose momentum, live in fantasies, and hide from action. You justify everything with logic, maturity, reason. But deep down, it's resistance. A profound refusal to open up to the intensity that life demands. And the scariest part? Most people adapt. They learn to live without feeling. They think that's how it is. That maturing means accepting this exhaustion. But in reality, it's your soul crying out for rescue. And it will only be heard when you stop lying to yourself. When you realize that what tires you is not life. It's the denial of life within you. Jung would call it by its proper name, disintegration. Not because you are weak, but because you are falling apart due to your refusal to feel. And the cruelest part is that the world around you reinforces this disconnection. We live surrounded by sexualized images, perfect bodies, promises of pleasure, but all of it is empty. It is soulless performance. Sexuality has become a product, marketing, currency for attention. But no one talks about the truth behind it. The chronic feeling that no matter how much you want it, you are never fulfilled. Desire is stimulated all the time, but real contact is increasingly rare. We touch without presence. We talk without listening. We sell ourselves as available, but we are emotionally inaccessible. And all this happens because we have been taught that feeling is dangerous. That instinct must be restrained. That vulnerability must be masked. But Jung said, what is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. And maybe that's what's happening to you. Maybe your life is being written by parts of you that have never been heard. Perhaps your choices, your desires, your loves, and your breakups are being shaped by an absence, not of opportunities, but of yourself. The sexual shadow does not need to be healed because it is not a disease. It needs to be faced because it is untapped power. It is trapped life. It is silenced truth. You can continue to hide this part of yourself and live a safe, predictable, but half-lived existence. Or you can start listening to what has been trying to emerge for so long. The choice, in the end, is between performance and presence, between the dormant version of yourself and the one that pulsates, feels, and surrenders. Perhaps the most alive part of you is precisely where you were taught to be ashamed. And if you've made it this far, maybe you're ready to open that door. Because no one finds fulfillment by denying half of themselves. And no one feels truly free by pretending to be someone they're not all the time. If this content touched you in any way, if you felt something inside you start to move, then I ask you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Today, YouTube only delivers this kind of message to those who need it most if there is real interaction. It is your gesture, a click, a comment, that transforms this content into a tool for awareness. And if you can support this channel with any amount, even symbolic, it helps keep this voice alive. Because living with truth is an act of resistance, and those who help this message exist are also sustaining that act.